In my last video on this truck, I added that boom and immediately realized it is way too big for this yard. In this video, I'm going to fix that. I'm going to take this running and driving World War II vintage CCKW and turn it into a trailer. But for once, I'm going to do it the easy way. At the end of that video, I suggested a trade. If you have something interesting you want to trade for it, I'm all over that. I could use a gooseneck trailer because I got to move stuff. I got offered exactly what I was looking for. Looks like this will solve both problems. I already made a deal for the truck, and the guy getting it has seen the video and knows how it was misfiring. Just to satisfy my own curiosity, I went ahead and bought new spark plugs and wires. 20 bucks worth. So I'm going to swap all those out and then see if it runs any better. Just so I know. I actually am pulling the distributor cap up, trying to pull the spark plug wire out. These are in there. There we go. That plug wire was stuck in there so badly, it actually snapped off, leaving the metal fitting in there. Now we get to go fishing. I'm going to try driving a screw into the rubber remaining, see if that'll pull it out. Don't want to damage the cap, I don't have a spare one of those. Oh, it's moving a little bit. Come on. There we go. It is kind of nice that you can do a tune-up without even opening the hood. Very convenient to work on. Okay, I take that back. It's a lot easier to get to the back cylinders with the hood open. Might have been possible, but easy's better. It's a good thing I opened the hood, so I remembered this. Looks like this line used to connect there, and this goes straight to the manifold. So we're going to replace that line too. It's probably a good thing I replaced that PCV line. It was a little dry. Normally, the cable would go along with the boom, so that when you lift something, it doesn't lift the boom up. But I want to lift the boom up and then let it down. I use the pulley of the hook right here to change the angle of the cable. You can see it better here. So the plan is to lift it up, loosen these safety chains, and then gently drop it down. Let's see how that goes. That worked. Oh, that's a load off. All right, now I gotta deal with the rest. I'm using both a jack and a jack stand to support this arm, so that should be fine. What I'm really counting on is the fact that it's still bolted to the truck, so it can't move around pretty much anywhere except straight up and down. I'm going to try to do this without unspooling the entire reel of cable. Hopefully it doesn't cause me problems. Just have to not run over it. Forgot how long these forks were. Did a little scratch on the cab. But I think it'll blend. The rig that's coming to pick this up has a deck that's 39 inches off the ground, so I gotta add that in. I think our legal limit is 14 feet or something like that. Oh, that's only 10 feet high. 39-inch trailer, that's under 14 feet. This one's under 10 feet also. We're good, this will work. Back when this engine was running on 4 or 5 cylinders, I never noticed a problem with the throttle pedal. It just sort of sputtered to life. Now it's hitting all 6, this thing just revs right up. Feels like the bottom of the pedal itself is the sticky part. That's better. Come to find out, where this was headed, there was a low bridge, and the stacking wouldn't work at all. So we undid everything and redid it. And then, the truck is on its way to its new home. And as simple as that, I turned a truck I didn't have any use for into a trailer that I do. Before we look too closely at this trailer, I want to bring one thing up. Because the fellow that traded me this trailer never said it was good. He didn't misrepresent it in any way and actually seemed very surprised I was willing to trade. I mainly did the trade because I knew I wasn't going to work on that truck. I wanted to go to someone that would. Because I got the feeling he was a younger guy that really loved that truck, and he actually put in the time and effort to make that truck good like it deserved. If we jump into the future, he sent me a picture of it where he's working on it inside in a proper garage. That truck went to the right home. There are a couple of things I really did like about this trailer, and I think that makes it worth fixing. Most trailers like this are a gooseneck. This is a 5th wheel hitch. It was probably made from a camper. I already have a 5th wheel hitch installed in this Dodge. This hooks right on. It's not very long. I can actually maneuver in this yard. The deck is just around 16 feet. It's 8 feet 4 inches wide, and we're allowed 8 feet 6 inches. So that's perfect. So I could put mini pallets of things on here. It also has stake pockets, so I can make some side rails to keep the mini things in there. Just discovered that the height here and a little bit of dovetail line up almost perfectly with that trailer. So things like that axle, which I want to put from there to there, I can just roll off the back onto the side of this trailer. That was a lot easier than I expected. The decking isn't just straight wood, it's actually tongue and groove. So the pieces can float side to side, but they're all locked together from going up and down, so it should stay pretty flat. And speaking of the deck, it's mostly there. There's a little bit of a chunk out, but there's no rot holes. This thing's pretty solid. It already has the modern style plug that I'm using already, and this has the hookups for the brake controller. There's also an upper deck on the tongue. It's got a spare tire that doesn't seem to hold air. Probably would come apart as soon as it got up to speed. But there's a pretty good amount of space up here. The upper deck is 58 inches wide. That's about the same width as this Jeep. Over 6 feet long. And for a deck over trailer, it's surprisingly low. 32 inches? That's a pretty reasonable height. These tires are a 15-inch rim, so they're not that tall. Tires are a bit old, but they hold air. Ooh, a grease fitting on the bearing cap. I like that. These are a 15-inch rim, so they're not too tall, but still big enough to handle highway speeds. Tires, 27 inches off the ground. And these are dropped axles, where the axle meets the spring is actually below the center line of the spindle. So that puts the trailer down pretty low. There's a short dovetail and a removable pen for ramps. A little bit of weld repair is required, but I'm going to have the welder out anyway. I'm noticing that the bed here and the tongue here seem to be at different angles. There's level on the tongue. It's off by a bit. Putting the straight edge up against here makes that look straight. This piece looks straight also. Looks like it's reinforced in 2 different spots where it connects. That looks pretty sturdy. This section of the frame is double layered, going to 9 inches high. That looks sturdy. There's some good size I-beams across here. Further back, the frame is 5 inches high. It's not very thick walled tubing, but it's a pretty big size. Hopefully we can see from the video where the flex is and where I need to reinforce. The weight's off the tongue. Looking at the before and after shows me that there is flex, but I can't really tell where it is. Putting a straight edge against the frame here, there's definitely a gap down at that end. It's only around 1/4 inch over about 4 feet, but there definitely is a bow to this frame rail. Need to make this frame a little bit stronger. Obviously I don't want to redo the whole thing, that's a lot of work. I want to make it stronger really easy. I got the trailer unloaded and brought it closer to the welding. This thing's pretty maneuverable if you fold the truck and trailer combo in half. I've unloaded the trailer and the bow on the frame is a little bit less. I think we're talking around an 1/8 inch over 6 feet, so much better. Even though those pallets look small, that was a lot of weight. And this random pallet of stuff that was on there, there's some miscellaneous things, but then 1/2 inch steel plate, 1/2 inch steel plate, thicker than 1/2 inch steel plate. I still want to make these frame rails a bit stronger. A simplified model showed me that all the stresses are on the outside of the material. These are strips 1/4 inch by 2 inch wide flat bar. Flat bar is not very rigid on its own. It's actually pretty floppy, but it's very strong in tension and compression. These strips are going to go right here and strengthen up that tubing quite a bit. Adding thickness to the outside really dropped the stress a lot. I need a little better access to weld that on. I need to follow one of my golden rules of life. Don't get squished. I'm going to run the reinforcement all the way down this whole rail, all the way into this upright piece. But there's wires coming at the bottom, so we got to reroute those first. I drilled it as close as I could to the middle, because we already know the stresses are to the outside edges of this piece. A couple of these wires had the insulation worn through where they're rubbing the edge of that tubing. I got to fix the insulation anyway, so I just cut them. Now I'm going to take some long needle nose, and I'm going to fish these wires through that new opening. You may notice there's 2 blue wires. I made sure to cut them at 2 different lengths. That way I know which one is which. I'm even going all out and removing the rust and paint before welding, not during welding. I applied my usual lumps of weld, made sure it was hot enough to grab, even though it's a little bit ugly. I did staggered welds all the way down to the spring purchase. I didn't worry about a continuous weld because this whole trailer is going to be pressed downwards. So the piece on the bottom is going to be in tension, so it's going to be pulled taut. It's not going to wave or warp or anything like that. Where the tongue meets the trailer is really well welded in. I don't want to make any adjustment here because it's going to be very difficult to get to anything. They're welded on the back side. That's not going to be fun. And that whole thing looks pretty sturdy as is. The jacks are actually welded to this upright, so I don't want to start changing anything there. And I need the jack to still operate through here. Pretty much my only option is somewhere in this junction. This triangular plate reinforces the whole thing and is going to have to be removed. It's held in with welds along its edge, but not that many, and they're fairly easy to get to. A weld melts both pieces of metal and re-solidifies in between the two. The bead penetrates in a bit, so you have to go beyond what you see on the outside. Generally, I try to come in at a slight diagonal through the center of the weld and then into the base material. The cutoff wheel alone pops some of the welds free. You can see that whole thing popped loose. Some are still attached, but much weaker. This is where a hammer and chisel comes into play. You can put that in the gap. Use it to pop loose the other welds. Pop loose. If they don't pop loose right away, you can leave them under some tension, then they come apart easier. Got it. I actually removed the jack handle to get a little more access. With the stub sticking out, it was a little tricky to angle in. But we got it now. Right where this beam and this beam meet on the inside, there's another weld. I'm going to see if I can chisel right through it entirely and pop that one free. Once you get the outer piece moving a bit, those welds will start weakening and you can sometimes break them loose this way. Just end up moving it around a bit on those welds. Usually they'll break eventually. Oh yeah, that's gonna come loose. Done. And you can see the results. I dug into the base material a little bit, but really not that deep. That we can fix easy when we're putting this all back together. The next step is making sure the deck is level. The longer the level is, the better. It'll average out any weird stuff in the wood. We use the tongue jack, and that'll adjust our level. Yeah, I think we're right about there. We use a precision leveling chisel. I'm going to pull this in, which will angle it up until I get the level I want. Oh yeah, we're way out there. Then I can measure the gap on this end to see how far I need to move it. We're about 1 1/8 inch over the length of the level. Using the information I had for how off level it is, I can take that 4-foot dimension and transform it into the 5-inch dimension across here, get the same proportion, which tells me I need to take out about 1/8 inch on this side and leaving that the same length. So I'm going to draw a cut line right here, and then 1/8 inch below that, we'll make a mark, change my angle so the end at the same point, so I make a pie slice. And that's the area I need to take out. I'm going to cut right into this corner, because when I go to weld it back together, it'll be easy to make a fillet weld connecting the two pieces, and that should be stronger than if I made it somewhere down in the middle. I'm going to cut this open with my trusty Sawzall, but I'm not going to cut this way. There's 2 reasons for that. One is that the wires are going through here, and if I cut straight through, I'm going to hit those wires. And the other reason is that when you're following a line like this, cutting like this, you have a tendency to go up and down and curve. I'm gonna put my blade the long way so I can sight along the blade, make sure I'm hitting my line, and make sure I don't go through too far. There we go. A little big on that end, that's okay. I could fill it all up with weld. The cut actually ended up going right to the hole where the wires are, so that all worked out nicely. By cutting partway through the tube, the tongue will pivot, but it won't fall off. I have it supported by a jack, so when it does pivot, I can keep it in position and adjust the position. Let's lower this down and see what happens. It's almost perfect right there. I'm gonna go a little lower. Now we're dropping about a 1/4 inch over the length. All metal flexes to some extent. So I'm gonna tilt this down some, so when I do have a big load on there, it'll all be straight. Same reason you see the semi-trailers with a big bowed trailer. When they put weight on them, they go flat. I've added lumps of weld filling that cut line on the outside and on the inside. But that's not nearly strong enough. We got to replace those triangular plates and add a little extra. When I put the triangular plates back on, I'm careful to line them up so those gouges I made cutting them off are right on the edge where I'm going to weld them back on. I'm going to make sure I use enough heat and filler. I'm going to not only connect this edge, I'm also going to fill in that groove. I filled up all the grooves I made, including ones that went astray a little bit. But now we're back to our original strength, just at a new angle. But I don't think the original strength is good enough. I think there's a reason I heard the word flexible used when this trailer is being dropped off. That'd be bouncing all over the place going down the road. We're gonna make this stronger. I'm gonna try to be a little bit scientific about this. I got this ruler stationary and I'm going to hang off this. Right now it's right at about 15 inches. That's how much flex we have. Let's add pieces one at a time, see how much that reduces. I've added one of the flat bar strips to the outside of this tubing. Let's try this again. A little bit better. We'll keep going. Now I'm going to try boxing in this triangular gusset here. I'll try again. That feels much better. Now I got extra reinforcement attached to the inside of this upright. It's interesting how it moves a little bit at start position every time. The final step's a piece right under here. Adding that brace definitely pulled this down a little bit. Let's see where we're at now. This is like exercise. Didn't expect that. It's definitely way better than it used to be. Thinking about it last night, I think the biggest change I made was in this triangular diagonal brace and adding some thickness to that. So this morning I went and boxed in the inside also. But I had another thought overnight, and I gotta check this. I was taking my measurements down there at the end, going under the assumption that this was staying in the same spot. I don't think that's actually true. I've got the jacks on the ground, which would make that part rigid. This end is held up by rubber tires and springs, which are flexible. We're gonna check the move it down that end and see if I've made a seesaw here. Got my yardstick set up. Let's repeat the experiment. Oh, I can feel doing that a lot yesterday. All right, let's see what we got here. Oh yeah, it's moving. All my science of measuring exactly how far that was flexing isn't accurate at all because that side's moving also. But I could definitely tell a difference, and I know I made that more rigid. So we're just gonna call it done and keep going. The ram pivot on this side was broken off. The weld didn't get very much penetration, and it was only done on one side, not the bottom side. I threw over 300 amps at the problem and hit it from both sides. I think I got enough heat in there to melt things and get it all hooked together properly. The wood's still smoking, so had to have gotten a little bit warm. As I was working on this, I noticed these amber beads appearing. And the problem is when you touch them, they're sticky. That's all sap. Apparently the climate here is different enough that all these boards are starting to ooze stuff out. The problem is every time I touch it, I get sticky, which isn't pleasant. So I'm going to do something to coat these boards and protect them from the sun. This is a technique for preserving wood that my dad showed me many years ago. First, you take a gallon of oil-based paint. Any old oil enamel will do, generally the cheapest you can find. And for some reason, my dad always chose gray. Then you add thinner. I'm going with xylene because I had it lying around from another project, and it dries slower. And we don't want this to dry fast. Now I looked at the container, it recommends trying 4 ounces per gallon to start with. I'm using the whole gallon. Then we stir it up. We want a nice thin mixture. It's common knowledge that preparation is key to a good paint job, so we're going to prep the surface next. Got rid of all the screws and nails. I did seem to prep a little bit of nature into my paint bucket. We'll just ignore that. And now we want the fluffiest roller we can find. Something nice and thick, it'll go over lumps. It's always good to check the viscosity and make sure you have the right amount of thinner. In this case, all of it. It looks thinner than water, should be fine. You know you got the mix right when it soaks into the boards almost instantly. Feels like I'm swabbing the decks. Effectively, I might be. It's been about 2 hours now, and all this slow drying stuff is already dry. It just absorbed right into the wood. So I bought another gallon, this time going with the cheap thinner. We're mixing up another batch for a second coat. This sat overnight, and it's actually slightly tacky still. That first coat absorbed right in, the second coat is actually staying on top. It should be dry by the end of the day. But the other thing I'm looking at is now that's starting to look better, this is looking worse. I want to do something about the rest of the frame. And I've got a lot of bare steel exposed now. I want to do something to coat that and protect it from rust. But I'm out of gray paint. I'll have to find some more paint in the shed. I've also got to do something about these old flaky stickers. They've got to go before anything gets painted. I found a scraper blade that mounts to the Sawzall. Let's see how that does. That's definitely the right tool for this job. It was the right tool for the job till it snapped in half. Darn. We'll try this one next. Not as fast, but it's getting the job done. Got a bit of paint left over from this project. I'm using portable masking with a piece of sheet metal I found lying on the ground. Get to take the masking tape off. We'll see how this thing really looks. But there's one thing I did that I didn't tell you about. I just found a set of tires on Marketplace. They're the exact right size, on rims with the right bolt pattern. It's even a set of 5. One of them has some sidewall damage, but the other 4 are good. The day code shows these are only a few years old, and they got lots of tread left. They're even load range E. These are perfect. These dried while I was painting the trailer. So after I put these on, we'll look at the whole thing. This is what we ended up with. All the welds and fresh metal and ground areas all have a coating on them, so it should be relatively rust resistant. On the decking, even the second coat is absorbing in, so I might do a third coat eventually. But it means that color is embedded in here, so if I scratch it, it should be the same color. I've got tires that are good for many years, and now I can get to the grease fitting on those hubs. Eventually I'll need to add ramps to these pivots, but for now I've got a lot of things that need to be moved that I can load to the forklift. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the way the whole thing came out. This thing's gonna be really useful. Well, that's it for this video. I turned a truck I was never gonna use into a trailer I'm gonna use a lot. I'm pretty happy with the way this came out. All the adjustments I made here not only made the trailer stronger, but the angle change picked up a lot of clearance in this area. So if the truck goes up and over bumps, I'll have a lot more room to work with. I like the color combination. I like the paint on the trailer enough. I'm thinking about finishing up the paint job on the truck. I always enjoy making things better than they were, so this project was a lot of fun. Hope you're having fun too, and we'll see you next time. Got my new reflector tape in so I can start replacing it. There's actually quite a few rules on this. One of the most important things I noticed was don't put a white reflector next to a red light. Either leave a gap or put the red reflector next to it. I'm gonna go with the red one next to it. The stickers came with a nifty little squeegee for free. Bonus tools. I'm gonna have a license plate there eventually, so now I jump over and go further down.